Hi, and welcome to FreedomFest TV. I'm Gina Carr, the producer of FreedomFest TV, and I'm delighted that you could join us today. We're going to have a lot of fun and learn some great things about what's going on with the economy and what's going on with FreedomFest. FreedomFest is coming up really soon. It's just going to start in less than 2 weeks, actually, or right at 2 weeks, so July 13th. And we'll be in Las Vegas learning about all sorts of fantastic things about the economy, politics, technology, health. There's be an Anthem Film Festival going on where there's fantastic films that will be shown. Many people will be seeing them for the very first time at Freedom Fest. There'll be great panels and events, special events, receptions, and luncheons. The luncheon with Judge Andrew Napolitano is already sold out, but there's still some tickets available for the one with Senator Rand Paul, Dinesh D'Souza, and some, that might be a breakfast with Dinesh D'Souza. But there are some special events that only Freedom Fest attendees can sign up for, and you're going to want to get in on these because it's really a great opportunity to mix and mingle with people who are really doing some significant thinking about the problems that we're facing in the world today and how we can solve them and how we can make the world a better place through solutions that are freedom based and liberty based. So with that, let's go ahead. So if you haven't registered yet, go ahead and register freedomfest.com. And if you use code FFTV, that's all caps FFTV, you can get $100 off. So go ahead and get your registration in. It's not too late. With that, let's go ahead and get started with today's program. I'd like to introduce you to your host today. He is the MC of Freedom Fest for this year, Terry Brock. He is a member of the Hall of Fame of speakers of the entire country and the entire world, actually the International Hall of Fame. He speaks about marketing and technology around the world. He's the former chief enterprise blogger for Skype and the former editor-in-chief of AT&T's Big Business blog. It's an award-winning blog, and he is a wonderful person. He's actually my life and business partner. I'm delighted to introduce you to Terry Brock.
Well, Gina, thank you very much. And it is delightful to be here today for a very special issue of Freedom Fest TV. This one we put together because of news that we saw happen. And you can see the wonderful guy with joining me here, Mark Skousen. Mark, good to have you on board today.
Well, I'm in sunny New York and you're in sunny Florida. How about that?
Yes, indeed. Both here on the East Coast and getting ready for it. Now, those of you that don't know Mark, you are in for a treat. And those of you that do know him, you're here because you know it's going to be a treat. Because there's a thing going on that has happened this last week that we know, unless you've been living under a rock, called the Brexit, where Britain said we're out of that EU thing. And so that has enormous ramifications economically. And Mark is the ideal person to help us on that because well, here I wrote some on some of these things here. Mark was an economic analyst for the CIA. He's a person that they went to. He's been a professor at Rollins College here in Orlando, Columbia University, and now currently at Chapman University. He has about 100 bazillion books out on economics. Is that a correct number, Mark? I think 100 bazillion.
Economics and finance. Not that many. I'm approaching 30 different books on various topics, most of them still in print.
Yeah, they're very good. And the thing I like most about Mark, you're going to notice this today, he has a knack of taking that complex subject of economics and making it make sense. Because I've heard him speak many times on it, I'm going, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So he is a guy that's going to help us. So Mark, I'm just going to get it started right off the bat here. We've seen what happened with Brexit. What ramifications does that have for us in our business here in the United States? What are your thoughts?
I live with my wife and family in the UK, in London. We had a London flat, and we had to sell it a few years ago to move to New York, and I have seller's regrets ever since, but I have a lot of fond memories of spending time in England and in London. So I think I have a sense of what's going on there, and it definitely is sending a very important message that of Brussels overstepping its bounds in imposing their point of view on the British people, in particular regarding immigration and regarding bureaucratic rules that they didn't like. And I think the same thing is happening in the United States with our feelings regarding Washington, whether it's Washington telling us how we have to live our lives and run our businesses and run our governments and our laws based on having things overturned by the Supreme Court, having the EPA tell us what to do in terms of production of oil and gas, what have you. I think there's a lot of anger out there that the vote in Britain was just touching upon. Now, as far as the economic impact is concerned, to some extent, I think it's a tempest in a teapot. It's very difficult to really change things. And so the UK has to, it's 2 years from now before they can actually exit the EU. And meanwhile, they may have seller's regrets, just like I had seller's regrets leaving London, selling my London property. And so now there's kind of a sense that this was a marginal rather than a very serious change. And you can see this in the stock prices initially collapsing, falling very sharply, having a major correction. But the last 3 days in the trading system have been up. And so I'm back to where I was last week in my own portfolio and in our portfolio in Forecasts and Strategies, my investment newsletter. So I think it's more of a tempest in a teapot at this point, although we've decided to have a special emergency session at FreedomFest. We're going to start off Thursday morning, July 14th, with our Bull and Bear recession talk and our Libertarian CEO panel talking about Brexit and to what extent this is going to be a major storm rather than a tempest in the teapot. This is what we're going to debate. You have people like Ron Paul and other who have been very doomsdayers and basically saying, well, there's just one more domino that is going to bring the whole system down. And I just don't buy that at this point. But, I'm the optimist. I'm the bull in the marketplace. And so you'll get a different perspective at FreedomFest for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the nice things about FreedomFest is we're going to have a debate, and more of a discussion between people about, is the sky falling or are there great opportunities? And we're going to get a chance to hear some really, really smart people on both sides look at that. I appreciate what you have to say, Mark, that you tend to be more optimistic. But let me come in here with a journalist question then. Well, how can you be optimistic when we're looking at 19 plus, almost 20 trillion in debt, and we're seeing more increased government regulation? We look at the two candidates from the two sides of the Demo-Publican Party, and it doesn't look very good for freedom and liberty. How can you be optimistic on that?
Yeah, and I think the optimism comes from accepting the reality of slow growth. We don't have a dynamic economy as much as we've had in the past. Our growth rate is under 2% per year, maybe even 1%. According to my gross output statistic, we're actually in a business recession right now. It's not a consumer recession, but a business recession. And that's the business sector is the largest sector of the economy, as my gross output statistic demonstrates. But my optimism comes from because you have such low interest rates. And as long as these low interest rates continue, and everybody expected at this point for interest rates to be substantially higher, and they're not. So we may be in a period of secular stagnation in terms of interest rates, which could be bullish for the stock market for a long period of time. We may be in the middle innings rather than the late innings. So there's a big difference between seeing a collapse in the economy versus a slowdown in the economy, which is what I'm predicting. And with low interest rates, you can have that. Low interest rates are also allow us to run these deficits and to kick the can down the road. It's not to dispel by any means the difficulties with funding the deficit and to pay for the debt. At some point, we're going to see higher interest rates, and then it is going to be a significant factor. You also have to remember that the government has in place a number of strategies that will increase revenues, taxes rather substantially. The fact that the baby boomers are retiring and have to withdraw from their IRAs once they turn 70 and a half. And I know, Terry, you're years away from that, but for those of you who are approaching their 70s, you're going to have to start taking money out of your IRA, and it becomes taxable. That's money that's going to pay down the national debt almost automatically. So there's a lot of reasons why the concern over the deficit is not as serious. So I don't really buy into the end of the world scenarios that the doomsdayers are predicting, whether it's as a result of Britain leaving the UK, whether it's the national debt, whether it's government regulations. Adam Smith made a very interesting observation in his book, The Wealth of Nations. He said that no matter how bad the administration of justice is, no matter how bad government regulations are, somehow we adjust. And the American people are very good at adjusting to Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, Sarbanes-Oxley. We've had a lot of rules and regulations thrown at us, and it still hasn't killed the American spirit. It's dampened it. There's no question about that, but it hasn't killed it so far. So not sufficiently for me to give up on my optimism.
Yeah, and so I think as we look at that, we realize, okay, yeah, we're recognizing it, but we also see a lot of good things happening. One of the benefits of this year at Freedom Fest, we're talking about our theme, Freedom Rising. That we say, yes, we acknowledge what's going on there, that we got our eyes wide open, but we also see the good that is happening. And it seems like a lot of good opportunities. Now, when we go back to Europe and we see what's happening there, they're talking about not only England leaving, but now we're wondering, what is Spain going to do with their election coming up soon? And there's talk of France, Italy, the Netherlands thinking about it also. What do you see happening with that? And what's your idea on further exits from the European Union?
Jim Rogers makes this point. He thinks the euro is dead after 5 years. But again, he's tends to sometimes make these extreme predictions that don't turn out to be the case. I actually think Brussels will maybe back off a little bit, realize that they have overstepped their grounds. These things go in ebb and flow, bull and bear markets, so to speak, when it comes to freedom. And as far as freedom rising, I find it interesting. If you look at the Economic Freedom Index, and we have the Cato people coming and the Heritage people who can talk about the freedom indexes. And while the United States is in decline in terms of economic freedom, the overall index has been rising. And it's been rising because other countries, Africa being an example of it, where they've expanded their economic freedom, in some places in Latin America as well, sufficiently to suggest an increase in economic freedom. But there's no question, Terry, you're raising a very important point. We may be seeing a significant paradigm shift when it comes to globalization, where there may be a little bit of a correction in globalization, where countries like the UK and elsewhere are saying, not so far, not so fast, let's pull back a little bit. And I think though, the fact that the UK, the British pound fell so sharply and stock market there dropped precipitously, that kind of scared people, saying, man, what did we vote for? What have we wrought? So this is, again, a debating point at Freedom Fest. And by the way, we've just added 2 new speakers. We get new speakers quite frequently at the last minute. One is Andy Puzder, who's a supply-side economic commentator. But even more importantly, he's the CEO of Carl's Jr., and he's going to be coming on Friday to speak to us. And we also have Anthony Scaramucci, who is the hedge fund manager, the money manager firm of Skybridge Capital. They also put on the SALT conference for hedge fund managers, brings in a couple thousand people to Las Vegas for a SALT conference. And he also produces and MCs the new Wall Street Week on Fox News that's on Friday nights that Louis Rukeyser used to do. So he's a very big name, and he's a very big supporter for Donald Trump, and he's coming in to make his case that anything's better than Hillary. And so we need to support Donald Trump, even if we're not supportive of all of his policies. But then again, we have Gary Johnson and William Weld coming in, representing the Libertarian Party. Last year, we jump-started Donald Trump's campaign on July 11th in Las Vegas, and maybe we're going to do the same for the Libertarian candidates, third-party candidates. They're legitimate in the sense that they have governed. They've had twice they've been reelected as governors, one of New Mexico and the other Massachusetts, and they did a good job, and that's a good sign that these are people worth voting for. So it's not throwing away your vote, in my opinion, to vote Libertarian this year.
Yeah, this year more than ever, we've got two candidates, both of whom are Republican governors that were reelected in largely very blue states, New Mexico and Massachusetts. So interesting. And by the way, you're watching Freedom Fest TV, part of what's happening at Freedom Fest coming up, the biggest gathering in the world of free minds. And we're using here on Freedom Fest TV a technology so you watching this live right now can come on and ask a question. So if you're here with us live, Mark is available. You get a chance to get something that people pay a lot of money to do, and that is to ask Mark a question and get an answer. All you have to do is click on that call in. You'll see that on your screen. You click on that, and then we click over here on our side, and you'll be able to come on screen. We would love to hear from you for questions, and make them real tough, because Mark is very smart and he can handle them. Whatever you
I'll just pass them on to you, Terry.
Oh, no, I'll let you know. You're the guy that knows the economics.
By the way, I've been watching the number of people signed up for Freedom Fest. We have about 1,600 people coming in. And I must say, the only thing I'm disappointed in is quite a few people are coming alone. They're paying one price. They're paying $5.95, signing up, and they're coming alone. And I think that's really too bad. You need to bring a friend or two. Freedom Fest is meant to be shared. And there's nothing like, what this is like, Terry. You come to a conference and it's a lot more fun to be with a few friends. So for all of those who are out there and you've signed up for Freedom Fest, bring some friends along, and it only costs $300 extra. So it's a really good deal. And you can split up and compare notes and come for a lot of our festivities, and it's just great to spend some time with friends and colleagues at Freedom Fest.
Yeah, I noticed we have a question. You might see that there, Mark. It said, what is Freedom Fest? Freedom Fest, we all have our own definition of it. For me, it is an intellectual feast. It's a place where you go and you stretch your brain. You meet a lot of wonderful people. I see actually two sides of Freedom Fest. One is it's like going to a university where you learn about a lot of very important topics from really smart people who can give different points of view on an issue. But I think one of the real benefits also is the other side, the people that you're going to deal with, the people you interact with, the friends that you make, the friendship, the people that you turn to and just say, hi, how are you and where are you from, and strike up those friendships. It really is good. So find out about that. You can go to freedomfest.com. And if you use the promo code, I'll just tell you right now, it's FFTV for Freedom Fest TV, FFTV. You use that code and you get $100 off. So we're looking forward to hearing from you and making that happen. And Mark, let's see, it looks like we had some questions coming in. So these are lectures and network meetings. Yes, they are. We do that. And if we have any questions, let's see, we had a question here from Alex, said, can the EU really be compared to the United States of Europe? That might be a complex and may not be able to completely answer here in this format. Well, Mark is very good at taking a complex subject and making it really understandable. Mark, how would you answer Alex on that?
The EU has always been known as the United States of Europe, and they're comparable compared to the population. So if you take the 30-some countries that are now part of the EU, you add up the population. It's very close to the United States in the terms of the size of the country and so on. The only difference is the cultural differences are pretty substantial between the French and the Germans and the Italians and the English. And so that has been made it much more difficult to simulate, bring them all together. But the idea is the free flow of money, capital, labor, everything crossing borders. And of course, that's caused some problems with immigration in particular, to allow the British have to allow any EU citizens to come into their country to work. You don't need a work permit anymore. And so that's like the United States. It's very similar in that respect. So I see a good comparison there, but culturally, it's much more challenging, and that's why they're having more difficulties now.
Yeah, that's true. Now, another question that just came in. We've heard this before from several libertarian and freedom-oriented sections on the net. It's that Jamie Maley asked, could Texas do the same with a Texit, Texas leaving the United States? What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, we actually have a gal from New Hampshire, I think, who's making the case for seceding. We have this great session this year. It's called LibX, and it's where libertarians make their most radical proposals. And one of the proposals is, of course, that the New Hampshire secede from the Union, not just the Free State project of bringing together all of these libertarians to take over the state government, but just to secede from the Union. And of course, Texas has long had this tradition, or this secret desire, sometimes open desire, to secede. But we fought a bloody civil war that killed 600,000 people over that. Is that something we want to do over some of these regulations that, frankly, I think we can live with, as long as they don't become too onerous? At some point, there's a tipping point, yes, where we start a revolution, but I don't think we've reached that point yet. There's no question that the UK leaving the EU is encouraging other groups to exit the EU, the United States to exit the United States. But I think the big message is that Washington, you're overstepping your bounds too often. Too much is being regulated, prohibited, mandated, and we need to change that and back off. And that's probably why Donald Trump is having so much traction in the polls, is because he's viewed as an anti-establishment character, anti-Washington in many ways, even though he might be just as interventionist as Hillary Clinton or others when he gets into office. Nobody really knows for sure.
Yeah, we don't know. And we have another question here asked a couple of times. John Pugliano, one of our past guests here on FreedomFest TV and a speaker coming up at FreedomFest, asked Mark, does Mark think that China will have a large currency devaluation? Mark?
Well, currency devaluation would encourage Chinese exports. They don't need to encourage Chinese exports. If anything, they need to encourage Chinese imports, since they have a huge export deficit. We have a trade deficit here in the United States, in that imports exceed exports, but in China it's just the other way around. So I don't think that would be a good idea at all for China to do at this point.
And as we got kind of a follow-up on that, what are your thoughts about the Chinese economy? Some saying that it's overheated, some saying that we're going to see some adjustments and corrections. What are your thoughts on the long-term, say for real long-term, like a full year? In our today's world, it goes fast. A long-term, a year, what would you say your prognostication for China?
China has a combination of genuine prosperity and artificial prosperity. They've increased the money supply rather dramatically. They kept interest rates artificially low. This is a recipe for a boom-bust cycle, and I think that that's why China has had the slowdown going on. They're not growing as fast as what we call a Chinese slowdown. We are going to have a major discussion on this. We have several panels on China at FreedomFest. I know Bert Doman has very strong feelings that China is on the precipice of a collapse. Certainly, emerging markets have traditionally had those problems. So that's something that we do need to be concerned about, because when you have an easy money policy, as the Chinese have, we know that eventually ends badly. We just don't know when. That's the problem.
Yeah, that is a problem. And a final comment on that, China from Jamie, China free market is vicious. The world needs to prepare to watch the procedures, or the producers, that is, reap the benefits of their hard work. And I think really when you think about it, that's the optimism we can have. I'm going to echo what you talked about, Mark, that we can be very optimistic, even in the midst of recognizing what's going on, because of the resiliency that we can have and how a free market operates. Even in the worst of the Soviet Union, there was a free market there called the black market.
Yeah,
and by being able to adapt and adjust and leverage technology, we can do a tremendous amount today as never before, at least in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Well, the biggest problem with China right now is the political and religious crackdown that is going on in that country. So on the 50th anniversary of what I call the anti-cultural revolution that Mao instigated, we're going to have a whole session on, is that being repeated in a little bit different way, not as great as suppression, but still there's a lot of suppression of dissidents in China. And we're bringing people who have just come from China who are going to come over and tell us about that. And we have dedicated one of our rooms to Harry Wu, who is a dedicated dissident in China for many years, and you'll be interested in hearing his story. So we have a lot of great things coming on at Freedom Fest. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all there. We have 1,600 people there. We hope to around 2,000 in a couple of weeks. We have a lot of people come on at the last minute, and you know, Las Vegas is one of those towns where you can always find a place to stay and come over to our conference and sign up and be a part of it. We only have it once a year, and it really is exciting. And the film festival, I mean, everything is put in place. If you go online, you can see our whole program now. We're going to have major media coverage. I can't wait to meet George Will and Don King. I mean, George Foreman and Don King, who are going to talk about their relationship with Muhammad Ali, who passed away this year. So we were fortunate enough to put this together at the time that Muhammad Ali passed away. So anyway, there's a lot of things going on that I've just been putting together the program. The Libertarian CEO debate is something that you will not want to miss, as we talk to John Mackey of Whole Foods and John Allison of BB&T Bank and Bill Bonner of Agora and Jennifer Grossman of Dole Foods, who is now the president of Atlas Societies. It's going to be a fun event. I'm really excited about it and look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah, it is going to be fascinating. It's always a great event and always exciting. Those of you that are watching right now, think about what you have just experienced. The idea of an intellectual feast that you'll be able to attend, learning from some really smart people who are there on many different sides of what's happening in the world today on a number of different issues. From, of course, politics, we'll talk about economics, we can learn that, history, nutrition, writing, and a host of other topics. I'm really looking forward to the Anthem Film Festival. We're going to chance to see, not only watch some great videos that are going to be there, the films are there, but many times we're going to have the actual people who wrote that or were involved in it right there with panels immediately afterwards for you to ask questions. It's one of those places you want to go. You don't want to sleep much. No, keep going strong. Sleep a little bit, but you don't go to Freedom Fest for sleep. We'll do that later, but you want to get all the information you can. Get your.
Don't forget, we have our mock trial this year. It's always our most popular event, and it's going to be global warming on trial. We're putting the global warming hysteria on trial. And some people say that global warming is responsible for Brexit because the British people had been told that out of Brussels, they were going to ban tea kettles and hair dryers and stuff like that, imposing new regulations, all for environmental purposes to fight global warming. And so as a result, that's the kind of unintended consequences that happen. So I can't wait for this we have the global warming advocates coming, and they're going to be put on trial for abusing privilege, creating havoc in the world, a slowdown economy and stuff. So looking forward to that a lot. So can't wait to see you all there, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds very good. All right. And Gina Carr will be coming on here for our final closing comments on that. Gina, appreciate you taking care of everything, engineering this properly. In closing, what do you have to say?
Oh, well, I just really appreciate everybody jumping on today. Appreciate the great conversation that's going on. Fantastic comments in the chat. Alexander Curtis had said that he saw several wealthy Chinese families purchasing complete floors in condo high-rise units, looking for places to hide their money from the Chinese government. So, that was definitely an interesting discussion.
I should just intervene here. When I was in Hong Kong last year, there were these stores that were selling watches, very expensive watches that cost $100,000 or more, and there was a whole bunch of them. And I asked him, I said, "What's going on here?" And he said, "Well, that's their way of hiding money, because they buy these watches and they're exempt from tariffs and exchange control. And you're carrying a watch, and it's a $400,000 watch, but it looks like a watch." And so that was their way of hiding money, rather than gold and silver and the other techniques that we use. I thought it was pretty interesting.
I think the real free market does work one way or another.
Well, and that's part of what's so fantastic about Freedom Fest is you can walk around Freedom Fest and you can talk to people who have some knowledge about these kind of things. I mean, there's some absolute world-leading experts there, as well as there are just people that are not such experts but are interested and can have intelligent conversations and want to learn about these kind of things. So you guys, if you aren't already registered, you can still get signed up. FreedomFest.com. Go to FreedomFest.com. You can register right there. If there's a phone number at the top of the page, you can use that if you'd rather. And if you'll use code FFTV, all caps, you get $100 off. And we're just really looking forward to seeing so many of you there. I know several of you that are in the audience today are already registered, Ian and John and several others. But it's going to be fantastic. We've got more comments there. Let's wrap it up. Chris says, "It's not a secret that Chinese investors are buying real estate in the U.S. and Canada. More people joining every second." This topic's pretty hot, and Mark Skousen's really hot. So this has been a good topic for today.
Yes, indeed. Well, we are just delighted. We could go on. As you can see, Mark, you're getting a chance to experience Blab here and the technology we're using. This is a free market exchange of ideas. You can see over on the left side, we're getting all the comments that are there. People can come in and can discuss what they want, say what they want. We have a free exchange of ideas, bringing in different ideas. And that's what Freedom Fest is about. For those of you joining us, look that up. Go over to freedomfest.com. It keeps changing on the website as new speakers are added all the time, and it's a lot of good information there. And you want to make sure that you are part of what's going on. So we really thank Mark Skousen for coming in today. Mark, we know you're busy, and we know that you were able to get in here just so we could talk about the Brexit here right before we get going. Thank you very much for being with us, Mark.
It's my pleasure. Take care, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you in just a little bit. This is Terry Brock signing off from Freedom Fest TV.